Yes, hello everybody. It's Jim Durkin for our Wednesday webinar series. Today we're going to delve into the data entry designer and how you can use it to help enhance your data entry workflow patterns and things like that. So let's just start. Here we are inside of ACT. Let's go into a custom table. Now inside of a custom table, we're just going to edit a record. Now, this is our default data entry. When you created the custom table, we created this pattern for you, but we're going to mix it up and change it and do things like that. At the top of this data entry form, there is a design button. If you're a manager or admin, then you have the design button. So I'm going to click on design, and that opens the form in our forms designer. So let's have a look at what our forms designer does a little bit. Well, for one thing is, it has the ability to have multiple layouts open at the same time. Now, I just happen to open up a layout. I'm just going to move it around here. Actually, let me close this down for a second to show you. We have multiple layouts on here. This is the default layout. And if we go and click on the drop down, we have a different layout here. Sometimes you have the data entry people have one layout, the production people have another layout, and the sales people, they see different looks at the same data. So let's go in to the designer so as people are seeing the screen. All right, so let me continue on. So again, when we click on here, this is the designer. And inside of the designer, then we have the drop downs of the different layouts we have. So let's go into the designer. And here in the designer, we can close and open different layouts. What's nice about our designer is we can actually open up multiple layouts at the same time. And what happens here, we have the default layout open. Let's click on and open up the drop down layout. And you get tabs up here. So you can switch back and forth between your layouts. And if we want to create a new one, we'll just call this our demo layout and say save. Now you can see that we have different layouts here. And if you want to close one, you just click on the close button. And let's go to this one and close. So you have the ability to switch back and forth. Okay. Okay, well, let's talk about what's in this layout designer. The layout designer has the left part is the toolbox, the center is our layout screen, and the right side are our properties. So if I click on a label, you can see we have a property. In fact, what I'm going to do is let's just resize this a little bit so we get to see it closer. There we go. So if I select my label, we have a text to the label. If I select a control, you can see we have the control properties. So we have different fonts, background colors, width. If I want to come along and change the width of it, I can, of course, just drag and drop. But say I wanted to make it exactly 200, I could just come into here and type in 200. And I can do that for all these. I can come along and say they're all 200 width. Now, if I had one set to my size that I wanted, I could just drag and drop these, or not drop it really. I could just resize these by using this element. I'm just going to say resize it. And you see it snaps to the grid. It's one of the things nice about this tool is that as you move it around, you see the blue lines. It's trying to find endpoints of other objects called snapping, and it snaps right to the grid. One of the things to note is if you highlight multiple controls, say if I grab the label, I use the mouse on this label, now that label control is my snapping element versus coming back, selecting these two controls. Now this one, the text box, is my snapping element. Okay, let's just look at the properties windows a little bit more. We have theme packs. I'm going to actually drag this out so it stands out a little bit. We down here have themes, and this is a rounded theme. You see the corners are rounded? So I can say, well, I want the classic theme, and that's just a square box. Or I want the underline theme, which is just that, an underline across. Hi, I want to welcome everybody today. Hi, I want to welcome everybody today to the Impact Wednesday webinar. Today we're going to do just data entry forms. So what is a data entry form? This is a data entry form, an ACT, city, state, zip. You know, this is a data entry where you type the values in, very basic. If you created a custom table and you go to edit this record, this is a data entry form. In fact, this is a very generic data entry form that was created for the basic layout here. But we can click on the design button. The design button is available when you're an admin or above, or a manager or admin. If you're a standard user, this design button is not there for you. But I am an admin, so I'm going to go into the designer. Now inside the designer, classic designer, I can grab an element and move it around. I can grab multiple elements. I can move those around. We do have a drag and drop, we do have a drag kind of snapping system. So if I move a control over here, you see that blue line? It's trying to align itself up here. If I drag it back, you see, oh, it aligns both on the left and the right here, vertically and horizontally. See the little indicators there, so I can let it go at that moment. Okay, on side, tongue-tied today. Okay, over here to the left, we have basically our toolbox. We'll get into that later. The center area is, of course, our design surface, and the area on the right is our properties window. And I'm going to resize this down a little bit just so we get our properties a little bit more centered here. So the properties are that, the properties of a control. If I click on this start time, it tells me it's a start time in here. And I can set the font color and things like that, the font itself. If I select a different style of control, we might see things like border color because it has a border to it. So I could change the border color to a red. Or I can take this one and change this border color to an orange. I can also come down here and select themes. So themes are the style themes. So I want to say this is a classic. And you can see classic is just a square box. I can also select multiples and say, oh, let's make all these classics. What that's doing is giving the user a visual data pattern, which might be easier for their data entry inside of here. So let's click on all these, and let's just call them the rounded theme again. And at one fall swoop, I can come along and make them all one color. Over here, we also have labels and width. So I can come into here and be more granular. I want it to be 125 width, or this one, I want it to be 300. Oh, nope, I hit the delete key. See, I hit 3, and I'm going to say it's now 300. There you go. So you can resize multiple controls at the same time. On any of these controls, we do have a properties button up here. And if we go to properties, it's going to bring out the field property, it's model. It tells you it's the model field in there, but maybe it's too small for you, and it's like this. It's a single character. That might be helpful to go and click on the properties that here. Also, on these controls at the top, which you can move around, I can go to the properties of this control. This control is a contact table, so it's telling us the contact, and it's showing us the contact field. So if I was to change this to country, it'll show you the country field in here. I'll change it back to contact. One of the things, too, you can do in here is tabbing order. I may want to tab top to bottom inside of here. So we have a tab by example here. So let's click on tab by example. And you'll notice that there's labels here that all say 0 on them. Okay, so those labels are not going to get, data entered to tab keys. But inside of here, I may want to go top to bottom, and this is tab by example, meaning I'm just going to keep clicking on it, and you see the numbers will catch up with me, 9, then 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. That's how you do it. If you wanted to set left to right, what you're going to need to do is if I turn off tab example, turn it back on, and again, it's by example, so I need to go click, 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 click. Again, this is the order that I want them in, and you have to click through each one in order to set your tab orders. Okay, one more thing inside of here, the color rules on the bottom. We are over here to properties. So let's go to this model. This field model has a color rule. If it's less than, or if it's empty in this case, make it yellow. I'm going to look at this manufacturing. This one happens to be orange, and this one happens to be white. What's nice about that, let's just close and save these changes, is that when I'm doing data entry, if I take out the manufacturer, it's empty, so it goes orange. If I start typing in there, Alfa Romeo, I can type data entry in there. What's good about this is, say if you go onto a record that somebody did data entry for it and they forgot a field, then we're going to come back and say, oh, there it is. We forgot those two fields. So even though you may have a very complex data entry screen, it's very easy to say, oh, there's a rule in there that it's going to go orange or yellow when it's the value is not put in. So yeah, we have to update this. This is a Ford Explorer, and you can see it's now updated. Okay, let's take our data entry and take it a step further. In the latest version of Impact, we took that data entry designer and wrapped it around Axe Data Entry Designer. And in fact, we really replaced it. So if we go to if we want to start doing changes to the Axe Data Entry up here, well, the native way, if we go to Designer, this is the contact. So this is Axe Native Designer. It has, some power at its time, but it's getting a little bit old. It doesn't have a lot of functionality that we wanted to include in Impact. So we included their layout. So say changes yes. We included their layout files in our designer. So now I'm going to go back to Tools, Impact Designer, and go to Contact. So here we are in our designer with theirs. One of the things is their fields here. If I click on their fields, we don't have styles set. Their fields don't allow styles. We do our fields. And you could drag each one off and then remove the website and drag it back on. But we felt that was a lot of work. So what we did is we have a thing up here, a feature up here called Apply Styles, Apply Themes. I'm going to click on that. Now, if you remember, this drop down over here had, the classic theme, the colorful theme, the rounded theme. So what we're doing is we're saying apply the theme. It's giving us a little preview. Let's select this color here. So we can select the color, apply the no border theme or the rounded theme. I'm just going to apply the rounded theme. And as you can see, that theme is now applied. So I'm going to close it in our designer. And there goes the old Axe layout into our new layout. Now, we even took it further than that. We said, okay, well, rounded's not going to do us. a lot of good. I mean, it looks cleaner and everything else, but now that we have full control of the designer, what can we do on top of that? So a couple of things we always hated about data entry, and especially something like this: multiple drop downs or multiple selects. Like this ID status is employer influencer, but what's afterwards? We don't know what's afterwards. It could be 2 things or 10 things. Well, we have different controls over here. Let's go over to our field box and let's go to our control, and we have a control called multi-select. So I'm going to drag that control over here, and it asks me which field do we want the multi-select on. So I'm going to say I want the ID status field. So there it is. It's on the screen. I'm going to just tuck it up here a little bit, and let's just go and view what this control does. Now I can see their employer, influence, investor, prospect, reseller, supplier. I don't have to click on this down arrow, which you would have to do an act and kind of hunt around. And in fact, when I go to a different record, I immediately see what they are. So that's one of the controls that we've added. And there are dozens of controls inside of here. All right, back into Designer. One of the things about the themes that we applied, and also about these themes on the right, a lot of times, you have these 2 controls, right? And these 2 controls, you got to, marry them, click on both to move them around. Wouldn't it be nice if they were already tied together? So I'm actually going to just remove this address label on here. And on this control, I'm just going to resize it here. This control over here, by default, it says hide label. I can say show label. So now it's showing the label on here, and it's just one control all bound together. Well, we can do this globally with our apply button again. I'm going to take out all these labels here. And just let me take a second to take out all the labels. Okay, there I took out all the labels. Now if I go say apply a theme, which I did a second ago, I'm just going to change the color. I'm going to make it more of the orangey color. But on here, there's a hide or show labels. So it's going to say show labels, apply this theme orange to everything that's on the screen. And there it goes, it applied it for us. But now that we have a label control, we can resize this back to what we want. And we can select multiples on here and resize them. Now we have something that's a little bit nicer, a little bit cleaner. You can go and change your colors at will and change your layouts. And it even did it with controls that were underneath the tabs. So it's not just what we're seeing here, it's the entire layout. And I say, oh, that's a bit bright orange for me. So let me cool it down this much and apply that theme. And there's my orange theme. Okay, let's look at some of our toolbox here on the left. Over here we have 4 general areas. We have the field list, and that's the field list of the fields that are in the table. So if I want the spouse's name, of course, I can just drag the spouse's name over here for us. And again, that's just the field list. Fields, let's go to controls. Now, controls are things like, I just want a simple label on the screen. That's a control. Anything you can drag around is a control. I want a read-only field. So I just want to say, hey, one of these fields, favorite or whatever, is a read-only field, or the home city. Again, just selecting anyone. So it looks and acts just like our control. You can do labels and things like that, change the color of it. But it's going to always be a read-only control for the end user. Here was our multi-select control. Remember, we dragged that in the field and we used the multi-select. And other things here are, if I want to create a new field, say if I just need it, I went to the field list and said, oh, I don't have the referred by field. If we come into controls, it's a character field. I'm just dragging it onto here. and referred by, So I'm saying it's a referred by, it's a character field. These are just the defined fields in here. If I was to say finish, it would create that field and put it on the layout. Another thing we can do is lists. Now, what ACT does is what I call it's the old newspaper term, below the fold, above the fold, right? So ACT has this tab control that puts everything below the fold, and things that are below the fold, when you want to look at them, you kind of have to hunt for them. Well, say I didn't want to hunt for the information. I wanted the information more at my fingertips here at the top. And I have a table called rentals. So underneath the list, it's a custom table. So I could say list, right there at the bottom. List from custom table. So I'm going to drag this control onto the screen, and it brings up my custom table selector. So I have a table in here called rentals. So I can say OK to that. I now have a rentals table in here. So let's just close this out and see what this looks like. So here's my rental table. Now I could hunt and look for it underneath here, but I don't have to. It's shown right here at the top. So as I navigate through different clients, different customers, I could see their rentals right here on the top. Not only that, with the rentals, where's my record? Sorry, I got turned off of my record. I'll look up my record. On the rentals, this list here has options where you can customize the columns, of course. So in this, I just want to see the amount, the start date, the end date, the manufacturer. So I can get rid of all these other ones. And as you can see, I now see the amount, start date, end date. Well, in the amount field, I can even go further here. I can right click and say, edit this one column, and there's a map function, which I can say, give me the sum. So I now know there's $19,000 that Jim Durkin has rented from us. So it's very nice to walk onto a screen, not have to hunt down different things under tabs, and have that information right at your fingertips. Now let's go back into the designer. Again, design, impact contacts. And I'm going to just remove these just to give us a little bit of room here. So again, that was lists. And there's lists of activities, lists of documents, lists of histories. Let's go into containers, because I'm going to actually use a container and a list at the same time. In the container, we have simple things like an image, a line item, a panel, which is just a square panel. You can change the color of your panel. What's nice about having a panel is if you came along and put multiple controls into a panel, I'm just going to grab these, I'm going to drag them and release them inside of this panel. Now when I click on the panel, I can move multiple controls around at the same time. So that's a panel. Let's go into a tab. Here's a tab controller. Again, ACT does have tabs at the bottom, but let's put our tabs at the top. So I can say this is tab number 1, and this is tab number 2. And there I have a controller, which is tab number 1 and 2. I want to actually do more of our advanced controller, advanced tabs called themes. So let's go to this tab controller. Now the advanced one, or the theming, has images on here. So I could say, let's call this our history tab, and there's an image here, and if you click on it, it goes to the hard drive, and you can select icons anywhere from your hard drive. So that's history. Let's go to this tab and say this is notes, and let's change this image. Or actually, no, notes. This could be rentals. It could be anything else. I'm just going to make it notes for right now. So I have a notes tab and a history tab, and I'll say OK to that. So here's my tab controller. I can go around to each tab page. So I'm going to go to history page. And now let's go to our list. I want the list of histories. I'm going to just take it, drag it, and drop it right onto that tab control. It defaults to history. And if I say, okay, there's my control, but I want to, nudge it here. I basically want to fill this frame up. If you go back at any time, any control, again, go back to the properties. Right here, it's called docking, and I want to say fill. And see what it does is it automatically just fills that frame up for us. So let's go to notes, and it's got a list of notes. Let's put it on there. It says notes. I'm just going to say fill. And I'm going to say OK. Now we have a tab control, which will show us the notes and the histories right here. And again, let's close this down and consume that one. And there's our history list, and there's our notes list right there at the top. And with any control inside of Impact, I am holding down the control key and using the mouse wheel. So I can zoom in and out and change the fonts like that quickly. Okay, let's go back into the designer. And we did controls, right? That was our tabs and panels. This is our button controls. So what we've done is taken the heavy menu system in ACT and made it more user-friendly. So we actually have a button on here that you drag on that will create an activity. So it creates an activity. I'll say, schedule follow-up. And I could actually put an image on that button. So I'll put a full task image on there. And the activity type is a to-do. So this is just setting the actions of when you click on that button, what it's going to do. So there's our schedule follow-up. And I'll say create a note. So I want to create a note on here. And again, select an image. Here's my note. Create a history. Sorry. Create a history. Let's cancel out of here. Yeah, it was create a history. I'll just start over here. I meant to select the note. And create a note. Create a note. Select the image. The image is a note. And create a note. Simple enough. Okay, another one of these buttons can be to create an entry in a custom table. Like we have a button here that says, create an activity. Well, it's going to put in the task of the calendar events, Well, I have a button on here that says create custom. So if I click on this button here, drag it on, it's going to say, create a record. So I'm going to say create a rental record and select an image. I can give it an image. And I think I have the car thing in here. There it is, Auto 5. And I want to select the rentals table. So there I have a button that creates a rental. So now if I go and close this and consume it, when I'm talking to the user, instead of having to go to the tab, to click on new or right click, I can just create the rental right there. So I've created a rental record. Now what I could have done is said, well, when you create the rental record, again, highlight this, go to properties, edit the record after creating it. So again, it's rentals. I clicked off of it. Rentals, edit the record, creating it. So let's close this down. And now you can see the button says create it and it opens it up. Okay, let's go back into Designer. I think we're winding down here with our toolbox over here. So that was the buttons, and then this is widgets. Widgets are very useful for some people. Widgets in here is like a local time. So you put a clock on the screen, you want analog or digital, or just say both to that. We'll have the local time here. But you can also put a chart or a pivot table on here. So let's just put a chart up here. And on the chart, it's using the activity table. And I'll say OK to that. And now the chart's on here. So I'm going to go and consume that. I'm going to see a digital clock here, or analog and digital. Okay, so my digital clock sped up here. It shows me the time. Here is my activity list. And now we have the options in here to say, hey, I want to show the pivot table. And I also want to say, show a chart. And let's actually make this a little bit bigger just because we have the room. I'm just going to go into the designer. I'm going to take this chart. I'm going to put it here. This could be a custom table, your rentals. This could be the opportunity table showing you total values year over year. So right now I have, I meant to turn that on, show the pivot, and then show the chart. So there we have 3 controls built into one in the designer. And as you navigate to different records, you see it updates the record instantaneously. There you go. Okay, that's it for the designer, this week's Wednesday webinar. Hope you found some interesting information there. You can always email us at support@impactact.com with any questions that you may have. Again, thank you for attending.